Hey garden friends, so I just got home from work just a little bit ago and wanted to get out in the garden for a while, walk around, kind of give an update on where we are with our fall garden. It's October already, can't even believe it. Doesn't even feel like October. It's like 80 degrees today. It's been a beautiful fall so far. I've got my raised bed here right by the house that I put in my greens. The soil's looking pretty dry. It's been hot this week and I haven't watered. But I've left a couple of kale plants in here from the spring garden and some Swiss chard plants as well that I trimmed back to give all of these little lettuce seedlings a chance to grow. And then I got like a really thick sowing here of like lettuce and spinach. Thanks. I think they're terrorizing the chickens.
There's any on this side that's dead.
When we put this cover over this raised bed last year, we had a plastic kind of roof that we had. It was that corrugated plastic. It's the same stuff that I have on my greenhouse that's out in my garden. And we had that over here as a roof. But then there was a bad windstorm, I think it was like last November or December, and it blew the roof off. And it was kind of on, you know, our things to do to fix that roof, and we haven't, and I don't know if we're really going to get to it this year, but regardless, I can still put even just normal plastic over this if we don't get the covering put back on, and that's going to keep a lot of this stuff growing probably through till January. Late January is when a lot of stuff just dies back and it gets too cold at that point really for most things, but it's nice to have fresh greens so close to the house. Our maple trees are starting to drop their leaves. They haven't really burst into full color yet, but we're getting there. Lots of nice crunchy leaves down here. So we're taking a quick walk to the back part of the property where we have our burn pile. And I wanted to show you something fun. So my mom was looking around the other day and found a big squash plant growing back there. And this is like one of the cool things, like when you grow food for a number of years, you ultimately just get volunteer plants that come up all over your property where you had things planted or not previous years. So we have this big squash plant and there's all these decorative gourds growing on it, and I'm really like excited because I like these gourds. So this is our volunteer squash plant. I see it's got some powdery mildew on it now. Look in here. So it's growing these decorative gourds. I think you could eat these if you wanted to. Last year I just used them as like fall decor. I didn't eat any of them. But there are like tons all over this plant. There's one, there's one, there's one. So I think this weekend I'm gonna come out and start to pick some of those and put out some, you know, nice fall decor. The chickens are chickening. We've got like 40 chickens now. We have too many. A lot of the chickens we hatched out this year turned out to be roosters. The other day I started to, my sons and I, we were catching as many chickens as we could. And then the ones that we know are roosters, I'm putting like a zip tie around their ankle, just very loosely, to be able to quickly identify them. Because we're going to be butchering the roosters, and we're planning on doing it in about 2 weeks from now. If we get ourselves in order, I ordered a book on butchering. We've never butchered our own chickens before. I've helped my friends Ashley and Brian at Rivlow Acres butcher their chickens a year ago, but that was the only time that we've ever done that, so I've like forgotten how to do it, and we have to get some supplies. So maybe 2 weeks from now, maybe 3, but ideally before it gets cold, we're gonna have the majority of the roosters butchered and put into our freezer, which I'm really excited to have our own meat. That'll be the first that'll be the first we've ever done that. So it's really cool. We did get their new coop moved. We haven't had a chance to do any work on it yet. Maybe this weekend we're gonna start painting inside and getting roofs put up. So that is to come. And it's the October garden with cover crop. We transplanted these strawberries about a month ago over into this area, and they are looking to be acclimating okay. Some of them are a little crunchy, but like this one here, already like runner. This is a runner from this plant, so I'm happy to see runners popping up. This will be really cool, filled in with strawberries next year. I have kale and like collard plants all over my perennial gardens. When it was June and I still had tons of like kale and collard seedlings left from like plant sales that they didn't sell, I just started plugging them in random places. I'm like, well, I can put these in my perennial garden. They'll grow and they'll still be good, and they're really nice, and I think I'm gonna really appreciate just having more of those leafy green plants around the property. Just easy to get. So this is what we've got going on in October. I've got long beans here growing on this trellis, and I didn't really pick many of these this year because I don't love the taste and texture of these. If you're gonna eat them, you gotta pick them when they're young, because then they get kind of tough. So I am going to collect the dried beans. So I'm just letting these dry out, but I grow these mostly because I just really love the whimsical kind of effect that they give in the garden. My broccoli and Brussels sprouts. This is an interesting situation. So I put all of these in, gosh, I want to say April. I put my seedlings in this space in April. And usually by June, July at the latest, I would have had broccoli. I either would have had broccoli or I would have had broccoli plants that flowered and went to seed because it was too hot. Surprisingly, that didn't happen. The broccoli never went to seed. It never created a head. Same with the Brussels sprouts. It just didn't really do much of anything in the summer except keep growing taller. And now I have these really tall broccoli and Brussels sprout plants. The Brussels sprouts are starting to actually produce Brussels sprouts, which is exciting because I've never had Brussels sprouts produce before. But the broccoli is still not doing anything. I'm like, what is going on? So I'm just leaving it and seeing if it's going to surprise me when, as the weather continues to get colder. Like, here's one of my Brussels sprout plants. It fell over. It's still got the root, but it's making little Brussels sprouts. And now, I'm not an expert on Brussels sprouts. I don't think you want them when they open up like this. This is not ideal. You want to harvest them when they're like kind of tight like this. But my thing is they're not getting very big. So like I left them to see, okay, are they going to get bigger? And then it did this. So I don't think they're going to get much bigger than this. So I probably should just harvest what I can here. You know, this plant also has like just really tiny little nubs. This one here though, these ones look pretty decent. I mean, they're still small, but they might be okay. But the plant itself is just very tall. This one in the back corner here, though, I think is the best, most impressive one yet, though. It's, yeah, pretty cool to actually have Brussels sprouts. They take a really long time to grow. But yeah, the broccolis, these are sprouting broccoli plants. I mean, it's pretty tall. I don't know what it's doing. I had a lovely birdhouse gourd plant volunteer on this trellis. I had those dried up painted birdhouse gourds hanging up here earlier this spring for the birds, and they drop seeds, and I've got these beautiful gourds. I don't know how long these are gonna last, because when the frost comes it will kill this plant, and these don't really look like they're very close to being like fully ripe, so I'll probably have to pick them green, but we can eat them like that. Icy, what are you doing? Is that something gross? Are you rolling in something gross? Yeah, I'm sure you are. Cosmo, no, get out. Out, get out of there. Come on. And then in one of my last videos, I know I had mentioned I had lavender that I started from seed. I winter sowed it, and I've had them in pots, little seed cups, for all summer. I finally got it transplanted into this space with it not raining very much and my lack of watering skills. They're starting to dry up, so I'm just like, I'm so over this lavender. I don't know what it's gonna do. And there's a couple that look okay, but the zinnias have been such a joy this fall. I still have a huge clump of basil I have to pick back yet. This bed is where I had potatoes, and then after I pulled the potatoes up, I just started throwing seeds all around. So this is a huge patch of calendula seeds, because I had calendula growing. It went to seed. I took the flower heads and just spread the seed everywhere. But I also have in here Chinese cabbage growing. So I got seedlings there and a bunch of little seedlings over here. With all the plants that I let go to seed in my garden, this year, instead of like taking the time to actually collect them and put them in bags, I just took the dried up plants and sprinkled the seeds everywhere in random spots, because I figured, well, they'll either come up this fall or they'll come up in a future year. So I'm just planting the garden for the future whenever the future comes. I was pulling up ground cherry plants the other day because I was getting overwhelmed with them. And I just left them here to dry out and finish ripening. I don't know if that will actually work. Let's see. These were all green. That one's still green. So many ground cherries. This little garden area is still producing. I grew soybeans for the first time for a fall garden, and they were kind of difficult to eat. They were kind of difficult to eat green, like they just were really tough even when I picked them young. I don't know if it's just the variety, so I decided to go ahead and let these dry out on the vine, and I will collect the seeds and either we'll cook them or I'll just replant next year for like an even larger soybean crop. But still so much kale, that's still good. Some is going to seed. Huge clump of celery. Fall corn. We just tried that the other day. It's not quite mature yet. And then I started to pick my black Spanish radishes, which I shared in another video, and some of them were so big. But now that I got those out, the smaller ones will have more space to grow and develop. All this kale and this collard plant, these are all just going to stay outside for the fall and winter. They will last quite a while. They'll last probably up until January, until we start getting some really, really hard freezes. But even then, they may rebound in the early spring. Like, these plants are so hardy. I love growing them. And like down my tomato alley here is a very interesting experiment I'm doing with, I sowed a cover crop of ryegrass. So we have a local farm store in town called Craze, and the woman who runs it, she's been there forever. She knows so much, And I went in there and I asked them if they had any cover crops because I wanted to get that in my garden. And this was probably a month ago. And I go in there and she's like, winter rye. I'm like, okay, good. Like, but I heard like, you know, certain blends are good, like hairy vetch and clover and crimson and the rye kind of, you know, combined together. What do you think? And she's like, no, all you need is winter rye. I'm like, okay. So I got a 25-pound bag. And as I started pulling out tomatoes and potatoes and carrots, I re-sowed those places with the winter rye. And it grew, it came up so fast, like surprisingly, like 3 days it germinated, it was ready to go, and it's coming in really thick now. So I had marigold plants in here interplanted with the tomatoes, so I left those, and I just think this space looks really, really pretty with the winter rye. So you can see some seeds by this marigold plant that haven't germinated yet, but it has also been very dry. But this is so super lush. Like, this would be a really nice just grass to walk on. Although I'm not gonna be walking in my garden beds. And then I'm also trying out in this one little area, like interplanting. So when this rye was much shorter, like way down here, I transplanted some broccoli and bok choy to see how it would do with growing amongst the winter rye. And so far, I mean, it's growing really good. I have had to come in here and kind of like pat the rye down because, you know, it's kind of blocking some of the sunlight from these little seedlings. Like this one too. But I'm kind of thinking that this rye will act as an insulator for these winter crops. Like this one looks really nice. So we'll see how those do. I'm just waiting to see if they're gonna grow. Still got lots of peppers. Pepper plants are still producing. The amaranth still looks beautiful. And the cover crops have taken over this whole space. So the reasons why you would want to put a cover crop down in your garden goes back to just overall soil health. If you think about it, in the wintertime, when we pull up all of the plants out of our garden, we're just kind of left with this bare soil with nothing in there. If there was no vegetation growing in that soil, what's going to happen is as it's raining and snowing and wind and all of that, your soil is basically going to start to wash away and kind of just flatten out. All that work that you put into building good soil and compost, it's just kind of going to wash away because there's no structure to hold it together. So when you have your plants growing through the season, you've got roots that hold the soil structure together, and when they get pulled out, then there's nothing holding it together. So a cover crop is really good to maintain your soil structure, and then it's also going to give it nutrient boost. So rye is good for just adding nutrients back into the soil. I'm not gonna let this rye grow to maturity and like grow ahead of grain, because then I would have rye growing everywhere in my garden. I don't want that. So you wanna make sure it's kept cut, like you're not gonna let it flower. So you keep it kept cut, but all of the greens and everything that you cut, it's gonna go back on top of the soil. So it's like a green mulch. And then in the spring, when I'm ready to plant, we will just kind of till or turn over the rye and the root structure and all of that, and then plant on top of it. So all of it will just kind of break down in place, and we will have a really nice, healthy soil. I started using a cover crop last year. In this garden space over here, I did a cover crop, and it was a mix that I got online, and it did pretty well. You know, I was pleased with it. I did notice an improvement in the soil over in that area. That side of the garden has typically like just more of a sandier, dry soil. So that's why I was like really trying to build it up. And I felt like it did good. Now I'm not gonna put cover crop over there this year because I'm gonna actually plant garlic over there. So I'm gonna do some different things and amend that with compost. But in any area where you're not really needing to plant right away, you're kind of done with it, I would, you know, suggest trying to do a cover crop of some sort. There's all kinds of options out there. So you can look to see what's best for you. I know, like, if you have really compact soil, I've read a cover crop of like radishes can be very good, or turnips even, to help break up the soil and loosen it up more. So depending on your needs, there's different cover crops for that. So something to look into. We're like 10 days out from our estimated first frost, and these peppers are just still producing. These are purple cayenne peppers, although they do turn red when they're fully mature. Here are lemon spice jalapenos. These are nice and yellow at maturity. This is some variety of bell pepper. I don't remember which one that is. We've got banana peppers growing, habanada peppers. So these are like a habanero, but they're not spicy. So if you can't do the heat, but you want the flavor of a habanero, like the fruitiness, the habanada is where it's at. These are gypsy peppers. I really like these gypsies. They're like a nice size. They don't get too much bigger than this. And they will turn red at full maturity, but they're kind of just a really nice size stuffing pepper. I shared about the big Berthas in one of my shorts. I don't see any here now. Maybe this is a big Bertha that's just smaller, but they were the largest peppers I have ever grown. I mean, they were larger than my hand. And then in this bed, I have so many beets still growing. I have had a really steady supply of beets all season from succession sowing. So I kind of sowed this bed really heavily. And then as I harvested the larger beets, then the smaller beets had an opportunity to grow. So that has worked out pretty good. Lots of beets. I was trying to do a fall sowing of carrots, and I did have some areas of the bed get some good germination. That whole area didn't germinate. I'm really not sure why. I don't know if it was the carrot seed or what happened, but a lot of these carrots are all coming up for fall. This whole trellis is full of the Cherokee Trail of Tear beans, and we've had our fill of fresh beans. I've canned a lot of beans, or frozen a lot of beans, so I'm letting these ones all just dry out at this point. Any green bean that you grow, you can just leave it on the vine until it completely dries, and then you can just harvest the beans inside, and then they're able to be replanted, or you can just cook them like a dried bean, any other dried bean, and just eat it that way. So I like to have some option to be able to replant and then also cook the beans. So this space is all where the corn was, so it's kind of a mess right now. My plan, hopefully this weekend, is to amend the soil all in here. To me, this is pretty dry and sandy. I mean, my soil is sandy anyways, but I would like to see this even darker and richer. So I have quite a bit of compost in my bins back there I'm going to put down, and then get this space ready for the big garlic planting at the end of the month. I'm also toying with the idea of kind of redoing this whole space, which I know I said I wasn't gonna do, but things change, feelings toward your garden change, and just thinking about how much garlic I'm gonna have this year. So I'm shooting for 1,000 cloves to plant. That's my goal. And I'm not planting the garlic where I did last year because it was outside of the garden. It wasn't in the fenced in area. It was kind of in the way. So I'm going to use my dedicated gardening space to plant the big garlic harvest. I'm thinking I will do a lot of interplanting of greens around it next spring to kind of maximize that space. But then we're just kind of like in a different season of life where I have a new job, and it's, you know, with the commute, it's a little bit more demanding. So I'm really focusing and like trying to think how I can best use my garden space and not make myself feel like super overwhelmed. So I'm thinking just more of the root crops for next year. So a lot of garlic for sure, beets, potatoes, carrots. All the root crops just do excellent in my soil anyways. And so I think by spending more time and energy getting those in the ground, they don't require as much time for processing. They kind of hold up better and don't have to be preserved right away like tomatoes or peppers do. So I think I'm gonna focus more on that. But to be able to accommodate that kind of growing, I have to redo some of these beds because some of the curves and the things like that, it's just gonna make it a little harder to plant in those areas. And again, I'm really gonna just try and go for what is the easiest sort of approach to be able to grow still a lot of food in this space and not make it, you know, not require just so much time for all the preservation stuff. But look how beautiful this area is. I mean, the fall flowers are just, I mean, they are not as vibrant, but there is just something so timeless about flowers, zinnias like this. I mean, they're faded, but I don't know. I just love the color even of the faded flowers. So I've been really hanging on to this whole garden area right here in the circle, but I have to get in here and start harvesting my sweet potatoes. So I've got sweet potatoes growing all underneath this beautiful mass of zinnia, and I need to get the sweet potatoes up. It's time. But I don't think I can really do that without disturbing all of the zinnias. So I'm gonna have to take them out, and then this place will look really naked. But I want my sweet potatoes. That's so pretty. I named my garden Bloom and Wilt because I just think there is so much to be said about all seasons of life. And while a lot of us are really excited about the bloom, I mean, the wilting process is also sad and beautiful at the same time. Like, and just right now, while I have all of these fresh blooms still next to like these wilting flowers, it's just so symbolic of what this garden means to me. And now is the good time to save seeds from these. So like this zinnia, nice and brown, I just pop the head off. I can either save this whole flower head like in a bag in the house because it's nice and dry, and then just go like this and let it, you know, crumble and fall apart next year when I want to plant. But like for right now, I mean, I can just do it now. The zinnias don't like to come back up after a cold winter, I've noticed. But, oh, there we go. But in the spring when I do this, I mean, it's the easiest way to plant zinnias. You can even do it with the flowers that are like just starting to dry out too. So I kind of like to do this better, is pick them when they're just starting to dry out, and then I will let them continue to dry like in a box until, you know, don't want to put them in a bag like now because there's still moisture, so you have to let them dry. But then you can kind of get an idea of what color the flower is for when you throw it back in the soil next year. So we need to water inside the greenhouse. The whole reason I came out here in the first place was to water in my greenhouse, and that is the last thing that I'm doing because I had to look around at everything first. The days that I have to go into the office, which is 3 days a week, but it's still an hour commute there and back, so those days of the week are very long and I don't really get to come out and play in the garden. Oh, why isn't this turning on? Got the wrong spigot going. There we go. So tonight was kind of a treat that I got some time to come out here and walk around with you all. And it's nice and warm, so it's like, this time of year is my favorite. I love the fall. I wish it was fall weather all year, because you still have kind of those cooler days where you can actually wear like fall clothing, and then you have hot days kind of mixed in, and it's just really nice. But let's look at this greenhouse. All right, so the tomatoes have all been removed on this side and been replaced with broccoli and cauliflower seedlings, as well as bok choy, which I'm having. The cabbage worms, they found their way in here and they ate these down, but they're starting to come back up at the root. And I also threw a lot of seeds in here of, again, I think it's the Chinese cabbage. So I have little seedlings coming up. Here's a little Chinese cabbage guy there. So I wanted some like more mature established plants to like really get going first, and then all of the little tiny seedlings, you know, those are just extra to see what we can get out of this. And then this area is lettuce that I sowed, and they all kind of went down to the end there. And then this kale and Swiss chard, I transplanted these from another area of my garden. I figure, why start new seeds, just put them in the greenhouse, and they have acclimated pretty good. And these will do really well when it gets cold because they're already very mature. And then on the other side is still pepper jungle. I think I'm going to pull these out maybe this weekend. I keep going back and forth on what I want to do. The thing with these peppers is that they will live likely until the end of October for sure. Perhaps the first or second week of November. So I could still be getting peppers for like another month. But I worry if I wait too long to transplant the winter crop, so like the broccoli and the cabbages and all of the leafy greens, that they're not going to have enough time to like start to grow and get acclimated before it gets really cold. So any cold weather crop, while it can withstand frost, especially like in this greenhouse, they'll be fine. But they have to still be at a certain maturity level to really tolerate it. If they're like little tiny seedlings, the cold will likely just stunt them and they'll just completely stop growing. So these pepper plants, they are still producing, but they're not producing like a ton. So I really feel that I'm kind of done with them. They had their time. We have lots of peppers and I have preserved lots of peppers, so I think I'm good on peppers. And I really want to get the most out of the space with all of my winter frost hardy stuff. I do have a soaker hose that I can put in here, and I've been intending to do that, but I have not yet. So overall, it's been a pretty good garden season. It has come with a lot of challenge for me. Not the fact that the garden didn't do well, the garden has done fantastic this year. Dare I say, one of the best gardening seasons I've had yet. So that's encouraging. What comes with that is just the overwhelm of abundance. And not just abundance in the garden, but abundance in other areas of my life. which is amazing and like great. It is also sometimes hard to balance it all. And like all things in life, you need a balance. So I've struggled a bit this garden season, especially in the last month, with just trying to maintain everything that I have to do, trying to preserve all the food that's come in while starting a new job, you know, getting the kids back to school. It's been a really hard couple weeks. So I'm also kind of trying to get into a new supplement regimen for some other health things and maintain and keep going on like my health journey. While I haven't been officially diagnosed, I have a lot of the symptoms, signs, markers of PCOS, and so it's good to have some direction on where my health has been and where it's gotten and why things are the way they are. But there's not a lot of answers out there on dealing with PCOS. So for about a year or two now, I study all about blood sugar regulation. I really enjoy listening to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast, which is all about regulating your blood sugar. And if you can do that, you lower your insulin resistance, and you can also kind of reverse the effects of PCOS. And there's other things too that go along with that, but so I listen to that stuff all the time. I really try to follow a lot of the advice that's given in that nutrition and health space. But despite all of my efforts in that area, I still have different hormonal things going on. So a lot of things with that has also added to my stress and just dealing with everything the last few months. So I'm hoping this new supplement regimen that I'm getting on through Young Living is going to help balance things out some more, so I feel better and I can get some energy back and keep up with everything. But although I'm also looking very much forward to the winter and slowing down and just kind of having less to do. This view right here has been one of my favorites the last couple weeks. This arch being so full. And then if you come right here, you can get a view of the whole tunnel system. And then with this amaranth plant back here and the corn and the kale, like, it looks a little fuzzy in my camera right now, but like when the sun is out, especially like at sunset, at golden hour, this view right here is just spectacular. And I sit here in this chair and just kind of look out at this whole area, and it's so nice. All this will change very soon. Ooh, I do want to mention, so these are more fall beets that I sowed. I did these in July and they have grown very quickly. You can see them kind of down in there. And my plan for all the beets in here is to leave them in this bed. So I won't pull them out. I'm just gonna harvest them as needed throughout the winter and they'll be fine. And then these are cabbage plants. So the big head of cabbage I harvested, and then all of these little side shoots came off of them. And I've been waiting to see when they're gonna make a head. Some are getting eaten up still. Some look like they're starting to kind of make the little head. So I'm just leaving all of these in. I don't need this space for anything. I'm hoping I can get some more cabbage. Oh, these look good. Oh, hey, look at that. These ones look really good. So they're starting to make heads. So there's one. That's a different plant. But yeah, they're starting to make heads. So that's exciting that I'm gonna get some more like mini cabbages. So yeah, that is the fall garden. A little bit of life update stuff and chicken update. I have to get going now to pick my kids up. So it was a good reprieve to get out here before the next item busy mom has to do. Hi. Hi, babe. Hi. So when are we gonna do a podcast? Yeah, we should.
There's a spider behind you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you got all the podcast stuff. We should do one. I can talk about how much I like vegetables and you can talk about how much you don't like them. I feel like we get a good audience.
You forced me.
Yeah, but you eat cauliflower now.
Yeah.
So that's a huge change.
Is it?
Yeah?
I eat peppers.
Sometimes. Well, thanks for hanging out with me on this little garden walkthrough, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye.